challenges they face in the supply chain and the market. And we're going to do some operation and data analysis. And we're going to jump to look in the future and give some wrap up with some recommendations. So let me start with introducing the Getty's business. Here we're using the 4P analysis. First of all, Getty's, they produce the ice creams. They have like 40 different flavors of ice creams, and they emphasize a lot on the taste of the ice cream. So they use the artisan way to produce like authentic ice creams. And based on that, they do not charge premium price for premium quality of their products. So they have a really competitive price. And so even though they have like different costs of the material, but they have like equal price for all those products. And when we look at the price, and they have like different outlets franchised, but they own the building. And they are not in the retail stores, not in the supermarket, but they have the only collaboration they have is with a bakery called Just Bake. Because they do not have really like particular customer segment, so they do not use too much advertisement, just like electronic and print media. Let me turn it over to Amit, and he's going to talk about the opportunities and challenges in the market.
Thanks, Pan. Well, I'm going to be talking about the present as well as the future market conditions for this particular industry. When I talk about present, the India per capita consumption is 0.35 as compared to the United States, which is 23 liters. Now, there's a huge gap within this. Why this is happening is because the different market conditions at different countries. With India perspective, we have the following reasons because of this. We have the economic conditions, the affordability issues, we have the infrastructure problems, and finally, we have the substitute for these products are many, which are eating up the market share for this particular product. And finally, we can't ignore the high seasonality. There's a lot of variation between the high demand in the peak period and in the non-peak period with respect to what is consumed. Talking about the future, now, again, this is with respect to the Indian market. It is expected to grow to 1.5 liters in 2030. With that said, there's a lot of opportunity. And why there is an opportunity in this particular area is because the disposable income for that country is increasing. The firms which are branded, they're going to be growing by 20 to 25% in this particular area. Now, definitely the industry looks lucrative, and we're going to do something to leverage that. But before we get into that, I'm going to be talking about the challenges which the supply chain of this industry is facing, specifically the Getty's. So we've broken down into simple 4 steps, which includes procurement, inventory management, we have the manufacturing, and the outbound. Outbound is nothing but the retailers. Let's go through it one by one. In procurement, what's happening over here? The product, ice cream, it has a lot of ingredients, and the products, we are getting it from abroad, which is, in Getty's case, we're getting the chocolates from the South America. We have the high price fluctuations, we have the import tariffs, the inbound logistics, the middleman cost, which are the big challenges which the firm is facing. Coming to the next one, we have the inventory management. What is happening? The product ice cream has a short lifespan. It gets obsolete very quickly. So with that condition, we need to have good storage requirements to maintain that particular product, and which could be used for a longer period of time. Finally, manufacturing, we have a lot of capacity to produce, but our capacity is restricted with respect to the production planning based on the service level policy. That is what is restricting to meet the demands. And finally, we have the idle capacity. It is nothing but the overhead costs which the firms are facing. The last point, which is the retailer. Now what is happening here is we have the demand, but we are not meeting them. Why are we not meeting them? Because we do not have the infrastructure. We do not have the cold storage requirements which is required. So before we go further, there's one another point which I'd like my colleague to take over and talk about, which is the seasonality, which is temperature, how demand is dependent on that, and which is a key vital feature within the Indian market. Deborah?
Ice cream is a seasonal product. We all know most of the ice cream is sold during the summer, and we see this also for Getty's. But as we look at the previous year at their sales numbers, what we notice is something different, and that is a huge drop in their profits, particularly in that period where we would expect them to sell most of it, and also another period of very high fluctuations thereafter. So first step we did is to look at what the policy was that they used during that period, and you see here highlighted for every period what they used. the main problem Getty's is facing is that the stores can only carry 350 units of ice cream per week. And during this high demand season, they have to split between their 4 flavors to cover this 350 amount. And as the graph shows, it would be, we could assume that the drop was caused by allowing more space for their top 3 margin products. But we wanted to take a deeper look at this, and we looked at different scenarios. What if Getty's would have used a different policy during this period? How would our profits look if we did this? And we can see that part of the gap is actually improved and is decreasing if we did that. And we could have increased our profits during that period of restricted storage by 4.5%. But it's not what we were expecting. We still want to see the same shape of high profits. So we dig a little deeper, and what we actually came to see for their top 3 product margins is that the accumulated expected demand is much higher than their real demand, even in a period where we didn't have any stockouts for these 3 flavors. What this leads us to conclude is that maybe this year their demand was just lower because of weather conditions. Maybe customers didn't find a certain flavor and they didn't buy the other ones. But this explains part of the gap that we have seen in this sales. But furthermore, by optimizing their policy, even with the demand as high as the one that we expect, there's a cap on these profits. Getty still cannot exceed the profit because of these 350 units storage limit. And what these implications have for Getty's overall, Ralph will explain later.
Thank you, Deborah. So as Deborah has pointed out, the right choice of the policy, of the target service level policy, just optimizes our revenues. As we can see here in this illustrative example, we have on the one side revenues and on the other side costs. And the right policy only increases the revenues and optimizes it, but we are constrained by the storage capacity. So there are 2 possibilities for us. We can either decrease our costs through cost efficiencies, or we can increase our revenues through expansion. And let me further elaborate on it. So we looked at the two factors, cost efficiency and expansion, based on their benefits, and we assessed also their risks and benefits. And due to time constraint, I would like to focus on the 2 most promising applications we want to introduce. First, increased capacity of stores during the peak season. This seems to be as an application for expansion, but we see it as an opportunity to gain cost efficiencies by allocating our fixed costs, our high fixed costs, over more number of units, or over a higher number of units. This will increase our margins, and it will increase also our sales, because we will be able to meet our demand during the peak season. On the other side, this requires investments such as freezers. And also, we might have unused equipment during the off-season. We have more unused equipment. Another thing is the change of receivable and payable policy. Currently, we pay our suppliers immediately with cash, and we receive our receivables from the profit-sharing contract just later, because we are flexible with it. So we want to untie some cash to be able to further invest into future expansion opportunities, for example. But on the other side, there are some risks with it, such as the resistance of suppliers and also the resistance of our franchisees, as this might be less attractive for them. On the expansion side, we did the same. We assessed the benefits and cost and risk. And we want to focus on in-store freezer and the vending cart. The in-store freezer have a low initial investment, but on the other side also lower margin than other opportunities. However, we would be able to meet peak demand. But we are not sure whether it is possible due to space constraints in Indian retailers which are currently existent. With vending cart, we would have an increased mobility, such as going to events, selling our ice cream, as also somehow like a marketing initiative for us. However, there's a higher nominal initial investment on it. So this still didn't clarify what we should do and what we should focus on in the short term and in the long run. So does our environment look like right now in the short term? So we have volatile and general low demand right now. We have unsecure margins, and we are also constrained by our capacity. So what we need is a stable cash inflow that enables future investments, and also we want to meet the current demand. Based on our assessment, we think that cost efficiencies are the best way to tackle these problems. For the long term, we look at an increased demand and also a market consolidation of the currently fragmented, highly fragmented market. what we need is we want to decrease our utilization gap, which is currently just 40% of our manufacturing capacity, and therefore we need capital for future investments, and also we need to gain this infrastructure. We need to build this infrastructure. Therefore, we think expansion is something for the long term. To wrap this up, we were concerned about the space constraints and the high seasonality, and we recommended the solutions of first choosing the right policy, which is the scale stocking level policy. In the short term, we will look on cost efficiencies, which enable us to further invest in the future for our expansion. Thank you very much, and we would like to open the discussion.
So when you guys looked at kind of your recommendations, looking at kind of where you want to go with the cash inflow and pushing back on suppliers and that whole scenario, what do you think are some of the risks, you know, with a fragmented market? Can you really push back on suppliers to get the right cash terms that you want? Can you push back on kind of franchisees or forwards to kind of go the route that you want to go as far as how you want to free up cash flow for the actual organizations?
So you need to somehow tell them that it's a win-win situation, because you need to further invest into your brand. You want to expand in the future. So they will also profit. Franchisees will profit from this by having a stronger brand image, and thereby also increasing the demand when the brand is once known. And yes, it will be definitely an issue, because we have 400 ingredients, and it will definitely not be the case for everyone. So we have to analyze our suppliers and pick those ones where we have also those who are also somehow dependent on us, so where there's an interdependency. Because when we just acquire or purchase a small quantity, we might not be able to push up our payables contracts, like the entire regulations. But when we have a high stake, we might be able to do that.
And an additional point to this is our production capacity is just 40% utilized. So we have a huge margin which we can utilize, and if we go into the expansion possibility which we are choosing right now, it would help us to reduce the utilization gap and definitely increase the profits for us.
Could mergers and acquisitions be another expansion opportunity?
Okay, so mergers and acquisitions, as we've seen, Geddes was already experimenting with 2 different brands, with Just Sundays and Go Geddes. So they recognized that Go Geddes work better, and it's also something about building the brand. When you start with a merger and acquisition, in India the market looks the way that they don't really look at the artisan way of doing it. So that you have really, they concentrate on the customer, they concentrate on the way of how to make the product. So choosing the right ingredients. So it's really also a marketing way. When you might hurt your brand image by choosing another current ice cream manufacturer, because he didn't do it the right way, or he didn't do it the same way you did it before. So this might cause some complications in the future.
And the firm just started in 2010, so that's too early to make such a decision right now. So we just want to build the brand first, and then leverage, and then probably we would pull in the higher players. So that is one of the things which we would look long term, not in the short term. Short term, we would want to increase the profits, which is at the most important priority right now, not the mergers.
And they're still struggling with the current demand as it is. They still have more than 50% spare capacity that they could utilize. I believe there's a lot that they can do internally and grow organic at this moment rather than mergers and acquisitions.
Yeah, and on one side, so they have like really confidential recipes. I think that's kind of a trade-off that you may want to face. You may have to face when you merge with anyone else, because they have like really premium products.
Time for one last question.
How about in your analysis on the increasing capacity, where you greenballed that from it does require investments, but you still increase the unused equipment opportunity. How deep did you go into your analysis on the actual capacity problem at the manufacturing?
We look more on not on the capacity of the manufacturing, but just the idea of adding just an extra space in the stores, and especially those that have that face a higher significant demand. because it's not capacity that constrains us, is we cannot put it in the stores, whatever we can produce. The only thing here that we didn't take into account is actually looking at what is the break-even point of investing into such a piece of material that we can utilize only for the peak period. But we looked at the numbers, and if we would actually keep that 90% level, or the level that maximizes our profit throughout the peak period, and we would be able to meet us, our profits would decrease significantly. So if we would implement that at least for those stores where we are sure that an additional profit can be captured by adding, let's say, another 100 units of ice cream, then that would be a feasible solution. But we didn't go into the very detailed numbers, but we've done like the size of it to see how that would work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.